Get in the car, Emily, unless you want them to find you first. I stopped so suddenly my shoes slid across the wet pavement. I had never seen the man before, yet he knew my name. Rain blurred the streetlights into pale gold streaks, and my breath came fast as I looked over my shoulder. 7 people were coming down the sidewalk. I didn't know exactly who they were, only that they had been following me for the last 6 blocks. My coat was soaked through. My phone was somewhere behind me on the sidewalk, and my fingers were wrapped tightly around the small envelope hidden inside my bag. I should have kept running. Instead, I looked at the man standing beside the black SUV. He was tall, dressed in a dark coat, with an expression so calm it seemed almost unreal compared with the panic inside me. 2 people stood several feet behind him, watching the street without saying a word. "How do you know my name?" I asked. My voice barely carried over the rain. His eyes stayed on mine. "Because I know what is in that envelope." My stomach tightened. I had spent the last hour wondering whether I had made a terrible mistake by taking it. Now a stranger was telling me he knew about it before I had even opened it. I took 1 step backward. "Then you know I can't trust you." Something changed in his expression. Not anger. Something quieter. Almost respect. "Good," he said. "You shouldn't trust anyone tonight." The people behind me were getting closer. I could hear their footsteps now, steady against the pavement. The man opened the passenger door of the SUV. "My name is Adrian Callahan. Get inside." I knew that name. Everyone in the city seemed to know it, even people who pretended they didn't. Adrian Callahan was the kind of man whose reputation traveled ahead of him. Powerful, private, untouchable. I had never expected to meet him on a rainy Tuesday night, while carrying an envelope I had found in an old records room. "Why would you help me?" I asked. He looked past me toward the approaching group, then back at my face. "Because they aren't looking for you, Emily." My heart seemed to stop for a second. "They're looking for what you're carrying." I glanced down at my bag. The envelope suddenly felt heavier than it had 5 minutes ago. "I don't even know what's inside." "Then we have a problem," he said. "Because whoever sent them knows exactly what it is." I stared at him, trying to decide whether getting into that SUV was the worst decision I could make or the only decision I had left. Then one of the people behind me called my name. I froze. Adrian didn't move. He simply held the door open and waited. No threats. No demands. Just a choice. I climbed inside. The door closed softly behind me, cutting off the rain. Adrian walked around to the other side and took the driver's seat. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at the bag resting on my lap. "Before we go anywhere," he said quietly, "you need to understand one thing." I swallowed. "What?" His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. "That envelope was never supposed to reach you. The envelope was never supposed to reach me." I stared at Adrian through the rearview mirror, trying to understand what that meant, but his expression gave nothing away. The rain tapped against the windows as he pulled away from the curb, leaving the empty sidewalk behind us. My hands were still wrapped around my bag. "Then why did it reach me?" I asked. Adrian kept his eyes on the road. "Because someone made a mistake." "Whose mistake?" "That is what I am trying to find out." I looked through the window. The city moved past in blurred lights and wet streets. My apartment was only 12 minutes away, but suddenly I did not want to go there. If the people following me knew where I lived, then home was not safe anymore. "You said they are looking for what I am carrying," I whispered. "Who are they?" Adrian paused before answering. "People who believe that envelope belongs to them." "Does it?" "No," his answer came immediately. "Then why are they following me?" He finally glanced at me. "Because you found something they spent years trying to hide." My throat tightened. I thought back to the records room at the law office. I had been working late, sorting old case files before they were transferred to storage. It had been ordinary work. Paperwork. Boxes. Dust. Nothing that should have changed my life. Then I found the envelope tucked inside a file that had no reason to contain it. I had opened it because I thought it was part of the case. Instead, I saw a photograph, several pages of financial records, and a name I recognized. "Adrian Callahan." "I saw your name," I said. His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Where?" "Inside the envelope." Silence filled the SUV. I watched his reflection in the mirror. For the first time, he looked less like the man who controlled the situation and more like someone who had just heard a piece of his own past spoken aloud. "What else did you see?" he asked. "Not much." I was scared. I took the envelope and left. "You did the right thing." "How can you say that?" I asked. "You do not even know me." His eyes met mine again. I know you ran instead of handing it over. The words stayed with me. He was not treating me like a criminal. He was not even treating me like a helpless stranger. He was watching me as if my choices mattered. A few minutes later, he turned onto a quiet street lined with old brick buildings. I expected another downtown hotel or some guarded mansion. Instead, he stopped outside a small private office building. Where are we? I asked. Somewhere they will not expect. He stepped out and opened my door. I hesitated before following him inside. The building was quiet. Warm lights spilled across the lobby, and the sound of rain faded behind us. Adrian walked toward a private elevator, then stopped. Emily. I looked at him. Before we open that envelope, I need you to promise me something. What? His voice lowered. Whatever you find inside, do not assume I am the enemy. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. Adrian followed. And as the doors began to close, I realized there was something he was not telling me. Something about that envelope frightened him more than it frightened me. The elevator doors closed, and for several seconds neither of us spoke. I could hear the soft hum of the machinery beneath our feet, but all I could think about was Adrian's warning. Do not assume I am the enemy. The words followed me like an echo. I looked down at the envelope in my bag. If you are not the enemy, then who are you? I asked. Adrian stood beside me, his expression calm again. Someone who has been looking for that envelope for a very long time. The elevator stopped on the 4th floor. The doors opened to a quiet hallway with dark wood floors and warm lights along the walls. Adrian walked ahead, then unlocked a private office at the end of the hall. Inside, there was nothing extravagant. A desk, 2 chairs, a wall of filing cabinets, a large window overlooking the rain-soaked city. He gestured toward the chair. Sit. I sat, but kept my bag close. Adrian remained standing. Open it. My fingers felt cold as I reached inside. I placed the envelope on the desk and slowly opened it. The first thing I saw was the photograph. It showed 4 people standing outside a courthouse nearly 15 years earlier. I recognized one immediately. My father. I had not seen that photograph before. Beside him stood a younger Adrian Callahan. He looked different then, less guarded, almost ordinary. I looked closer. A third man stood between them. Who is he? I asked. Adrian's expression changed. His name is Daniel Mercer. The name meant nothing to me. Then I turned the photograph over. There was a handwritten date and 1 sentence. My breath caught. What does this mean? Adrian took the photograph from my hand. His eyes moved across the writing, and for a moment the room became completely still. Your father wrote this. I stared at him. My father. Adrian nodded. He gave me a copy years ago. I thought it was the only one. I looked at the remaining papers. They were financial records, but the numbers did not make sense to me. Transfers between companies, property purchases, payments listed under names I did not recognize. Then I saw a familiar name again. My father's. Why was my father involved with you? I asked. Adrian sat across from me. He was not involved with me. He was investigating someone who worked around me. Then why is your name here? Because my name was used to make those transactions look legitimate. I stared at him. You were framed? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the photograph again. I was 20 years old when this began. I trusted people I should not have trusted. His voice was quieter now. Your father was trying to uncover the truth. I felt something shift inside me. My entire life, I had believed my father died after years of financial problems and professional stress. I had never known he had been investigating anything. Why did he never tell me? I whispered. Adrian looked at me. Maybe he thought keeping you away from it would keep you safe. The room suddenly felt smaller. I reached for the final item in the envelope. It was a small brass key attached to a handwritten number. 14. Adrian saw it and stood immediately. Where did you get that? I looked up. His calm expression was gone. It was inside the envelope. He stared at the key as if he had seen a ghost. Then he said something that made my heart race. Emily, that key opens a room I have not entered in 14 years. That key opens a room I have not entered in 14 years. I stared at Adrian, waiting for him to explain, but he was already moving toward the door. Then why have you never opened it? I asked. He stopped with his hand on the handle. Because the person who sealed it told me never to. Who? Adrian looked back at me. Your father. The answer landed harder than I expected. My father had been gone for almost 10 years, and yet somehow, his decisions were still reaching into my life. Adrian opened the office door and motioned for me to follow. We returned to the elevator in silence. I held the brass key in my palm, feeling the small ridges against my skin. 14. I kept thinking about that number. 14 years ago, I had been 14 years old. My father had still been alive. My mother had still been calling me downstairs for dinner. Our house had still felt like home. What happened 14 years ago? I asked. Adrian pressed the elevator button. Everything changed. The doors opened. We stepped inside. My father disappeared from your life? I asked. No, Adrian said. He disappeared from mine. The elevator descended slowly. Adrian explained that Daniel Mercer had been the person handling the records connected to the old transactions. When my father started asking questions, Daniel vanished. Soon afterward, several companies connected to the investigation changed ownership. Adrian's family distanced itself from the entire matter. Then my father stopped communicating with him. He never contacted you again? I asked. Not directly. Then how do you know he sealed the room? Adrian looked at the key in my hand. Because he sent me a letter. I looked up. What did it say? Only one sentence. The elevator doors opened. We walked through the lobby toward a secured stairwell. What sentence? I asked. Adrian stopped beside a locked metal door. If anything happens to me, do not open room 14 unless my daughter brings you the key. I felt the air leave my lungs. My father wrote that. Adrian nodded. He expected you to find it one day. But I did not even know the room existed. Neither did most of my people. He unlocked the stairwell and led me downstairs. The hallway beneath the building was colder and quieter. We passed several storage rooms until we reached a plain door marked only with the number 14. I looked at the key. My hand trembled. Maybe we should not do this. Adrian turned toward me. You can walk away. I looked at him. He meant it. There was no pressure in his voice. No command. Just a choice. I thought about my father. About the photograph. About the people who had followed me through the rain. Then I placed the key into the lock. It turned with surprising ease. The door opened slowly. Inside was a small room covered in dust, with old boxes stacked against the walls. A single desk sat beneath a faded photograph. I stepped closer. It was a picture of my father, Adrian, and Daniel Mercer. But there was something else in the photograph that made me stop. Behind them stood a young woman I recognized immediately. My mother. And written beneath the photograph were 4 words that changed everything. She knew the truth too. She knew the truth too. I read the words again, hoping they would somehow change. They did not. My mother had been in that photograph 14 years ago, standing beside my father and 2 men whose names had become connected to a secret I never knew existed. I turned toward Adrian. He had gone completely still. You knew my mother? I asked. I knew of her, he said quietly. But I never understood why she was involved. I stepped closer to the desk. Dust covered everything except one small wooden box sitting in the center. It looked as though someone had placed it there recently. I reached for it, then stopped. Was this here before? Adrian shook his head. I have not entered this room in 14 years. I looked at the box again. Then who put it here? Neither of us had an answer. I opened it carefully. Inside was a folded letter, a silver key, and a small card with an address written in my mother's handwriting. My heart started beating faster. I knew that handwriting. I had seen it on birthday cards, grocery lists, and notes she used to leave beside my breakfast when I was a teenager. I unfolded the letter. The first line was addressed to me. Emily, if you are reading this, then your father was right. One day, the truth would find you. I had to stop reading for a moment. My eyes burned, and I pressed the paper against the desk. Adrian remained silent beside me. He did not try to take the letter. He simply waited. I continued. Your father believed the people around him were being watched. He also believed that someone inside the organization was using his name and Adrian's name to move money through companies that did not exist. My breath caught. Then came the sentence that changed the meaning of everything. We were not trying to hide the truth. We were trying to protect you from it. I looked at Adrian. Why would my mother need to protect me? He slowly shook his head. I do not know. I read the rest of the letter. My mother explained that Daniel Mercer had discovered the financial records first. When he realized someone was manipulating the accounts, he went to my father. Together, they tried to trace the source. But before they could finish, someone warned them to stop. My mother had wanted to go to the authorities. My father wanted more evidence. Adrian's younger self had agreed to help them. Then everything fell apart. The final paragraph was shorter. Emily, there is one person you must never trust. I stared at the empty space beneath the sentence. There was no name, only a small mark drawn in black ink, a circle with a line through it. Adrian recognized it immediately. "What is that?" I asked. He did not answer. "Adrian." His eyes remained fixed on the page. That symbol belonged to someone I trusted. Who? He finally looked at me. Victor Hale. The name meant nothing to me, but the way Adrian said it made the room feel colder. Then I heard a faint sound from somewhere upstairs. A door closing. Adrian looked toward the hallway. "We are not alone." I folded the letter and held it against my chest. "Who is here?" Adrian's expression hardened. "Someone who knows we found the room." The sound came again. A door closing somewhere above us. I looked at Adrian, and for the first time since we had met, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. Not fear. Calculation. He reached for the letter, folded it carefully, and handed it back to me. "Put it in your bag." "Why?" "Because if someone came here looking for this room, we cannot let them know what we found." I slipped the letter into my bag. Adrian picked up the wooden box and examined the small silver key inside. "There is another location," he said. "Your mother left an address." "Then we should go there." He looked at me for a long second. "You trust me that much?" I almost laughed. "No, but I trust the fact that someone has been following me." A faint smile crossed his face. "Fair enough." We left room 14 and walked back toward the stairwell. The building seemed strangely quiet now. Every sound felt louder. The rain had softened outside, but the city beyond the windows was still covered in gray light. When we reached the lobby, Adrian stopped beside the front desk and checked his phone. Several messages had appeared. His expression changed as he read them. "What happened?" I asked. "The people who were following you are not connected to Victor Hale." I stared at him. "Then who are they?" "I do not know yet. You said you knew everything." I said I knew more than you did. He put his phone away. "There is a difference." We stepped outside. The rain had almost stopped, leaving the sidewalk shining. Beneath the streetlights, Adrian's SUV was waiting at the curb. Before I got inside, I noticed a familiar shape across the street. A woman stood beneath an awning, holding an umbrella. She was not watching Adrian. She was watching me. The moment our eyes met, she turned away. "Do you know her?" Adrian asked. "No." He studied the woman for a few seconds, then opened my door. "Get inside." This time I did not hesitate. We drove for several minutes before I finally asked the question that had been sitting inside me since room 14. "Who is Victor Hale?" Adrian was quiet for a moment. "He has worked with my family for more than 20 years. "And you trust him?" "I used to." "What changed?" Adrian looked through the windshield. "Your father." My chest tightened. What did my father discover? Adrian took a slow breath. He discovered that someone had been using my family's companies to move money without our knowledge. But the records were designed to make it look like I was responsible. "So your father was blamed too?" "No." Adrian's voice became softer. "My father believed the records. He thought yours had betrayed us." I stared at him. "And that is why my father disappeared?" "That is what I believed for 14 years. We drove in silence. Then my phone vibrated. I looked down. There was one new message from an unknown number. I opened it. There was no greeting, no explanation, just a photograph. It showed my mother standing outside the same building we had just left. Beneath the photograph were 6 words. "Your mother was never supposed to survive." I felt the cold return to my hands. Adrian saw my face and pulled the car to the side of the road. "Emily, what did you receive?" I handed him the phone. He read the message once, then again. His expression changed completely. "This changes everything. This changes everything." Adrian's words stayed in the car, hanging between us while rain traced thin lines across the windshield. I stared at the photograph on my phone. My mother stood outside the building we had just left, younger than I remembered, wearing the same gray coat from the picture in room 14. But there was something else in the image. A man stood several feet behind her. His face was partly hidden by the shadow of the doorway, but I recognized the shape of his shoulders. "Adrian," I whispered, "look at the person behind her." He leaned closer. His eyes narrowed. "That is Victor Hale." My stomach dropped. "You are sure?" "I have known him for 20 years. I looked back at the photograph. My mother had been watched. She had known something. And somehow, Victor had been there. Then why did he tell everyone my father was responsible? I asked. Adrian did not answer immediately. He started the engine and pulled back onto the road. "Because if people believed your father was responsible, no one would look at Victor." The answer made a terrible kind of sense. I opened the message again. There was no second photograph. No explanation. Just the same 6 words. Your mother was never supposed to survive. My mother died when I was 14, I said quietly. A car accident. Adrian looked at me. Are you certain? I frowned. Of course. I was there after it happened. My father told me she was gone. Adrian's expression softened. I am sorry. I looked down at my hands. For years, I had accepted that loss because there had been no reason not to. Now everything I remembered felt uncertain. What if my mother knew Victor was involved? I asked. Then she may have been trying to protect you. And my father? He may have helped her. We drove another mile before Adrian turned toward a quiet neighborhood outside the center of the city. The address from my mother's note led us to a small brick house tucked between 2 older homes. Nothing about it looked important. No security. No signs. Just a porch, a mailbox, and a faded blue door. Adrian parked across the street. Stay here, he said. I looked at him. No, he raised an eyebrow. Emily, I have spent my entire life being told what I should not know. I am done with that. He studied me for a moment. Then he nodded. All right. We go together. We crossed the street and stood outside the door. I held the silver key from room 14. My fingers were shaking, but I pushed it into the lock. It turned. Inside, the house smelled faintly of old paper and cedar. There were no signs that anyone had lived there recently. Adrian switched on a lamp. A wall of photographs came into view. My father, my mother, Daniel Mercer, Adrian's family, and dozens of people I did not recognize. I stepped closer. In the center was a photograph of my mother holding my hand when I was 14. Written beneath it was a date, the exact date of the accident. But the photograph had been taken 3 days after my mother was supposed to have died. I could barely breathe. Adrian, I whispered. He came beside me. Neither of us spoke. Then I noticed an envelope taped beneath the photograph. My name was written across it in my mother's handwriting. I pulled it free. Before I could open it, my phone rang. The screen showed a name I had not seen in years. Mom. The phone rang again. I stared at the screen, unable to move. Mom. My mother's name. The same name I had not seen on my phone since I was 14 years old. Adrian stood beside me, watching my face. Answer it, he said quietly. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I pressed accept. For 3 seconds, there was only silence. Emily. The voice was older, softer, but I knew it immediately. My knees nearly gave way. Mom. I could barely speak. A breath came through the phone. Then she said, I am sorry. Tears filled my eyes before I even realized I was crying. Where are you? I asked. Somewhere safe. Why did you let me believe you were dead? Another silence. Because I needed you to live. I looked at Adrian. He had stepped back, giving me space, but his eyes remained fixed on me. Who was after you? I asked. My mother's voice became quieter. Victor Hale. The name seemed to change the air in the room. He discovered what your father and I were doing. We had proof that someone had been using Adrian's family companies to hide financial transactions. Victor wanted the records destroyed. Your father refused. What happened to Dad? My mother's breathing became uneven. He disappeared because he wanted me and you to be safe. I closed my eyes. All those years, I had believed my father had abandoned us in confusion and fear. Now I understood that he may have been trying to protect us too. And the accident? I asked. It was staged. My heart pounded. Then who died? A woman who helped me leave the city. She looked enough like me from a distance. Victor believed I was gone. I covered my mouth. The truth was too large to fit inside my mind. My mother had been alive all this time, watching from somewhere far away, waiting. Why call me now? I asked. Because Victor knows you found the records. I looked at Adrian. He gave a slow nod. There is one thing you need to know, my mother continued. Adrian is not responsible for what happened to us. I swallowed. I know. My mother was quiet. You trust him? I glanced at Adrian again. He did not move. I trust that he has been trying to find the truth. Then listen to him. But do not let him make your choices for you. Something inside me settled. My mother had always understood me better than anyone. Where are you? I asked. I cannot tell you yet. Mom, please. Emily, I promise you will see me soon. The call ended. I stood there holding the phone against my ear long after the screen went dark. Adrian finally spoke. She is alive. I nodded. And Victor knows. He looked toward the window. Then we have to move before he finds her. I opened the envelope my mother had left behind. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 3 names were written across it. My father's. Adrian's. and Victor Hales. But beside Victor's name was one final word. Betrayer. I looked at Adrian. She left us the truth. He nodded. No, I whispered. She left us a choice. For the first time that night, I understood what my mother had meant. I had spent years believing I was the girl everyone needed to protect. I was not. I was the person who could finally decide what happened next. Then we choose what happens next. I looked at Adrian across the quiet room, still holding the paper with the 3 names. My mother's call had changed everything, but somehow it had also made the next step clear. I was no longer willing to spend another year believing a story that had been written for me. Adrian picked up his phone. I can have my people locate Victor. I shook my head. No, he looked at me. Emily, he knows you found the records. Then we stop hiding. His expression remained still. What are you suggesting? I placed the paper on the desk. We make him believe he still has control. Adrian studied me for several seconds. Then something almost like approval appeared in his eyes. You have a plan. I have an idea. I pointed to the photograph of my mother. She spent 14 years waiting for the right moment. My father spent years collecting evidence. You spent 14 years trying to understand what happened. I am not going to let all of that disappear because Victor is afraid of the truth. Adrian nodded slowly. Then we used the records. All of them. The next morning, we met with a lawyer Adrian trusted, someone completely outside his usual circle. The documents were organized, copied, and verified. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was changed. Every transaction, every name, every connection was placed in order. For the first time, I could see the entire story. My father had not betrayed Adrian's family. He had been trying to expose someone who had been using their companies. My mother had not abandoned me. She had disappeared to keep me safe. And Victor had spent 14 years making sure no one connected the pieces. Then Adrian placed one final folder on the table. There is something I never told you. I looked up. What? He opened the folder. Inside was a letter written by his father 14 years earlier. The letter admitted that he had suspected Victor but had never found enough proof to confront him. He had trusted the wrong person because Victor had been part of the family for so long. Adrian looked at me. My father made a mistake. So did mine, I said. They both believed they had to carry everything themselves. He nodded. Maybe that is why they failed. The word stayed with me. That afternoon, we released the evidence through the proper legal channels. We did not need threats. We did not need fear. We needed the truth to stand where everyone could see it. Within hours, the story began spreading across the city. Companies connected to Victor were investigated. Old records were reopened. People who had stayed silent for years finally started talking. Then my phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number. Emily, my mother's voice. I smiled through tears. You were right. About what? I finally stopped running. She was silent for a moment. Then she said, I knew you would. Adrian stood near the window, giving me space. When I ended the call, I walked toward him. She is coming home. He smiled. Good. I looked out at the city. For years, I had thought Adrian Callahan was the most powerful man in the room. Maybe he was. But power had never been what changed my life. It was the moment he opened that car door and gave me a choice instead of an order. I turned toward him. Why did you really help me that night? He looked at me for a long moment. At first, because you were in danger. He paused. Now, because you remind me that protecting someone does not mean choosing their life for them. I smiled. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The city lights reflected across the glass like 1,000 new beginnings. He had spent years trying to control everything around him. I had spent years believing I had no control at all. Somewhere between those two lives, we found the truth. And I finally understood something my mother had known all along. Sometimes the person who saves you is not the person who carries you away from danger. Sometimes they are simply the person who stands beside you and lets you choose where to go next.